Good morning. Hope all of you are fine. Let us start the new lesson. What do you mean by environment, children? The sum total of all the external factors present in the surroundings influence an organism. It is called environment. Simply, environment is the surroundings of an organism that influences the life. Nowadays, we talk a healthy environment and work for global summits to discuss environmental issues. It deals with how various factors in the environment interact with each other and how we impact the environment. It explains how different materials are cycled in the environment in separate biogeochemical cycles. During this cycle, essential nutrients like nitrogen, carbon, oxygen, and water are changed from one form to another. Organisms and their environment is studied under ecology. Ramdeo Misra is called as the father of ecology in India. Let us study more about our environment. Okay? What happens when we add our waste to the environment? Have you ever think about this, children? Human population size has grown enormously over the last 100 years. The demand has been increased for food, water, automobiles, and numerous other commodities. These demands are exerting tremendous pressure on our environment and are also contributing to pollute the environment. Thus, in the daily activities, a lot of waste materials are thrown to the environment. It creates pollution. All waste that we generate can be categorized into two types, that are biodegradable wastes and non-biodegradable wastes. Okay? What do you mean by biodegradable substances? The substances that are broken down by biological processes are called biodegradable substances. The biodegradable substances are broken into simpler, harmless, and non toxic substances in nature. This decomposition is completed by the action of microbes like bacteria, fungi, etc. These substances cannot be magnified biologically. These can be transformed into resources as these are biological in origin. Fecal matter, cattle dung, household garbage, human urine are the important examples of biodegradable substances. Besides these domestic waste products, agricultural residue, paper, cloth, wool, silk, and manure are also biodegradable substances. Non-biodegradable substances. The substances that are not broken down by the biological processes are called non-biodegradable substances. These substances may be inert and simply persist in the environment for a long time. It may harm the various members of the ecosystem. The non-biodegradable substances cannot be broken into simpler, non-toxic and harmless substances in nature because these are not degraded by microbes. Since these are mainly man-made, they cannot be easily recycled. These substances may exhibit biological magnification. Polythene bags, glass objects, pesticides like DDT, industrial chemicals, heavy metals like mercury, lead, arsenic, etc., synthetic fibers, plastic objects, ballpoint pen, refill, etc., are non biodegradable substances. Let us see ecosystem and its components. The term ecosystem was coined by Tansley. An ecosystem is the structural and functional unit of biosphere where living organisms interact with the physical environment and shows interplay of matter and energy. Biosphere means the part of the earth where living beings exist. An ecosystem is a self regulating, complete system that exchanges matter and energy for the existence of organisms. Many ecologists regard the entire biosphere as a global ecosystem, that is, a composite of all local ecosystem on the earth. Thus, all organisms such as plants, animals, microorganisms, and human beings, as well as the physical surroundings, interact with each other and maintain a balance in nature. All the interacting organisms in an area, together with the non-living constituents of the environment, form an ecosystem. Thus, an ecosystem consists of both biotic components comprising living organisms and abiotic components comprising physical factors like temperature, rainfall, wind, soil, and minerals. Biotic components include living organisms of an ecosystem. On the basis of food habits, these are classified as producers, consumers, and decomposers. Producers are autotrophs, which synthesize food from inorganic substances. All green plants and certain blue-green algae act as producers in an ecosystem. Then, consumers. These are organisms which depend on other organisms for food. All animals which eat plants or other animals are called consumers. The herbivores are called primary consumers. The primary carnivores are called secondary consumers, and the secondary carnivores are called tertiary consumers. If it is the ultimate or final consumer, it is called top carnivores or top consumers. Consumers can be grouped into four categories: herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, and parasites. Herbivores are animals eating only plants and plant products. Example, cow, deer, rabbits, etc. Carnivores are animals eating only other animals. Example, snake, hawks, tigers, etc. Omnivores are animals eating both plants and animals. Example, crow, man, etc. Parasites are animals that suck food from living host. Example, mosquitoes, plasmodium, tapeworm, etc. Okay. Decomposers include many bacteria and fungi. These organisms feed on dead plants and animals. They break down the complex compounds of dead organic matters and release inorganic nutrients after decomposition. These inorganic substances, together with the other organic substances, are used as energy sources by producers. Thus, the biotic components include producers, consumers, and decomposers. Now you know an ecosystem consists of biotic components and abiotic components. If you visit a garden, you will find different plants such as grasses, trees, flower bearing plants like rose, jasmine, sunflower, etc. And animals like frogs, insects, and birds. All these living organisms interact with each other, and their growth, reproduction, and other activities are affected by the abiotic components of ecosystem. So a garden is an ecosystem. On the basis of nature, ecosystems are of two types: natural ecosystems and artificial ecosystems. Natural ecosystems are self-regulated and self-maintained. These include a pond, lake, a desert, and a forest, etc. Artificial ecosystems are human-made ecosystems. As these are maintained by human, artificial ecosystems include aquarium, gardens, crop field, etc. You might have seen an aquarium. Let us try to design one. As you know, aquarium is a man-made ecosystem or artificial ecosystem. It is managed and regulated by man. In order to create an aquarium, a large rectangular glass jar along with a lid, oxygen pump, few aquatic organisms, fish food, light source, maybe an electric bulb, etc. are needed. The fishes would need a free space for swimming. That means it could be a large jar. Water, oxygen, and food should be available. If a few plants and animals are added, the aquarium can become a self-sustaining system due to energy flow. Thus, this small self-regulated and self-contained system is also called a micro-ecosystem as well as human-made ecosystem or artificial ecosystem. Imagine the situation where you do not clean the aquarium and some fish and plants have died. Have you ever thought what happens when an organism dies? The microorganisms comprising bacteria and fungi break down the dead remains and waste products of organisms. These microorganisms are the decomposers as they break down the complex organic substances into simple inorganic substances that go into the soil and are used up once more by the plants. Thus, decomposers play an important role in the recycling of materials, replenishment of the soil nutrients, etc. They also clean up our surroundings by decomposing dead organisms and wastes from animals and plants. If you do not clean your aquarium, the water in your aquarium will become dirty. This is because of the waste generated by the fish and the plants. We do not need to clean natural aquatic ecosystems like ponds and lakes. In these, wastes are consumed by decomposers. For an ecosystem to work, there has to be a flow of energy within it. The organisms of the ecosystem need energy in the form of food. The ultimate source of this energy is the sun. Producers like green plants trap solar energy and convert it into chemical energy of food. When the primary consumer eats the producer, a part of this energy is passed on to it. The primary consumer is then eaten by a secondary consumer, and the secondary consumer may be eaten by a tertiary consumer, and so on. In this way, energy gets transferred from one consumer to the next higher level of consumer. A series of organisms through which food energy flows in an ecosystem is called a food chain. A series of organisms feeding on one another. This series of organisms taking part at various biotic levels constitute a food chain. Thus, the energy transfer from producers through a series of other organisms with the repeated eating and being eaten form a food chain. In 1927, Charles Elton introduced the idea of food chain. The energy is transferred from one step to another sequentially in a food chain. The various steps in a food chain are called trophic levels or energy levels. The first trophic level includes all autotrophs. The second trophic level includes all herbivorous organisms like rats, rabbits, deers, grasshoppers, etc. The third trophic level includes carnivorous organisms or predators and feed directly on the herbivorous organisms like a frog, predatory fishes, etc. Fourth trophic level includes top consumers or omnivores and feed on the herbivores and carnivores. It may be tigers, lions, whales, sharks, etc. In a forest ecosystem, grass is eaten by a deer, which in turn is eaten by a tiger. The grass, deer, and tiger form a food chain. In this food chain, energy flows from the grass, which is a producer, to the deer, and deer is a primary consumer. Then to the tiger, tiger is a secondary consumer. A food chain in a grassland ecosystem may consist of grasses and other plants, grasshoppers, frogs, snakes, and hawks. In a freshwater aquatic ecosystem like a pond, the organisms in the food chain include algae, small animals, insects and their larvae, small fish, big fish, and fish-eating bird or animal. Now see some common food chains. You know that there is a flow of energy in the form of food within an ecosystem. The flow of this energy is unidirectional, that is, it flows in one direction from the producers to the consumers at successively higher trophic levels. This energy cannot flow back because a higher level consumer, such as a snake, cannot be food for lower level consumer such as a rabbit. The green plants in a terrestrial ecosystem capture about 1% of the energy of sunlight that falls on their leaves and convert into food energy. A part of the trapped energy is used by the plants in metabolic activities like growth of new tissues, and a part of it is lost into the surroundings as heat. The remaining energy is available as food to primary consumers. Thus, we can see that only a fraction of the energy absorbed by plants is finally available to the next trophic level. When primary consumers like deer eat plants, they get the available energy in plants. Some of this energy is used for activities like moving, digesting, etc. And some of it is lost as heat. Only about 10% of the available energy in the food gets transformed into new tissues or flesh of the animal. This is available to the carnivores, that means secondary consumers at the next trophic level. At this level too, the usage, loss and storage of energy follow the same pattern and thus continue at every trophic level. Apart from this, energy from dead plants and animals is transferred to the decomposers. We find that when energy flows from the producers to the consumers at different levels, there is a loss of energy at each trophic level. It has been found that only about 10% of the energy available to a trophic level is transferred to the next trophic level. This is called 10% law. It was proposed by Lindemann. Let us look at an example. If 10,000 kilocalories of energy are available to grass, that is producers, 1000 kilocalories of energy would be available to the grasshoppers, which is a primary consumer. 100 kilocalories would be available to frogs, which is a secondary consumer. And only 10 kilocalories would be available to snakes, consumers of the third order. After this, very little energy would be left for the next level. So, the food chains generally have up to 3 or 4 trophic level. That is, if the food chain is longer, energy loss will be more. Now, the organisms at a trophic level are food for the organisms at the next higher trophic level. But there is a loss of energy as one goes from a lower to a higher trophic level. Therefore, the organisms at the higher trophic level need to eat large amount of food to fulfill their requirement of energy. So, the number of organisms at a lower trophic level is usually more than that at the next higher trophic level. If the numbers of organisms at different trophic levels are represented graphically, a pyramid is formed, which is called the pyramid of numbers. Now, the characteristic features of food chain. The interactions among the various components of the environment involves flow of energy from one component of the system to another. From autotrophs, the energy goes to the heterotrophs and decomposers. The green plants in a terrestrial ecosystem capture about 1% of the energy of sunlight that falls on their leaves and convert into food energy. An average of 10% of the food eaten is turned into its own body and made available for the next level of consumers. Food chains generally consist of only 3 or 4 steps. The flow of energy is unidirectional in a food chain. It does not revert back. The energy moves progressively through the various trophic level. It is no longer available to the previous level. A food chain is a linear arrangement of animals. It does not give a complete picture of the feeding relationships among the different organisms of an ecosystem because many of them eat more than one kind of food. For example, a snake does not eat only mice. It may eat insects, frogs, small birds, etc. Snakes in turn may be eaten by hawks, eagles, peacocks, owls, etc. Thus, an organism can be a part of many food chains. Different kinds of linked food chains exist in an ecosystem. These food chains form a network of interconnected food chains called a food web.